listening to Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth on AFR Talk.
Welcome back, Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth, AFR Talk. Without further ado, let's get to the Colonel Gordon Cucullu. He is the president of the Valhalla Project, a program and a project that takes our returning veterans from the battlefield and integrates them back into society as we know it. He has been a man who has consistently honored his fellow soldiers, not only with his service in the Green Berets, he's a Green Beret, but also with what he has done with his writing. His books include Separated at Birth, How North Korea Became the Evil Twin, Inside Gitmo, and his latest book, which is Warrior Police, which he co-wrote with his wife. Warrior Police, rolling with America's military police in the world's trouble spots. And he joins us every Friday right now. How are you, my friend?
Hey, doing well. Thank you, Crane. Glad to be on with you again this pleasant Friday evening.
It's always a pleasure. We appreciate you making the time. Let's begin with Israel and Iran, because as we look at the world situation and what's happened with Iran, with Rouhani, the newly elected president, or selected president, if you will, he has come out with a charm offensive. And President Obama has embraced this, talking officially to the Iranian leader for the first time. This is the first time in 30-plus years. Tell me, why did it take so long for the president to speak with Rouhani, if somebody were to ask you that? And was it a good idea?
Well,
Colonel?
Because I think history is going to tell us whether it was a good idea, Crane. I mean, you and I probably have our own opinions that it's not such a great idea because it's typical of the Iranians and others of these tin pot dictators, whether they're secular or Islamic or regardless, that they love to engage someone in the West who they think is appeasement-minded and is vulnerable to negotiations, and then engage them in those negotiations, while behind closed doors they're continuing with whatever nefarious program that they had instituted in the first place that caused the hostility. So I believe that why the first time in 30 years is probably multifold. One is previous American presidents of all parties tended to recognize this as a fact of life post the embassy crisis in Tehran in 79. And the current president is a person who tends to be in love with his own voice and is seemingly, to hear his words and observe his behavior, believes that if he can talk to anybody, he can convince anybody of anything. And I guess to give him his due, he's fooled the American people twice, so I guess he figures he can, he's got good odds going into the Iranians. But these guys are pros. I mean, they've looked at this and figured, they've read the tea leaves and they've seen the apology tour and the endless obfuscations about fundamental Islam and terrorism, and figure, hey, here's a guy we can play the con game on, the talk con game, while we make war in the background.
What do you say
exactly
to
what this turns out to be?
Pardon me for interrupting, sir.
No, not at all.
But what do you
host.
say? Well, yes, but you're the guest and you're the expert, my friend, and I want to get it all. Tell me something. What do you say to those who would suggest this is the way? You mentioned the apology tour. They see a new America they can work with, not a George Bush cowboy invade your country and try to liberate your people and install some quasi-democracy of some in some way. Yeah, it bothers me even to ask the question, but I do want to ask it in all sincerity. What do you say to people who say the apology tour, the way that we are going and respecting other countries, this is going to allow us to engage the likes of Iran, and rather than through bullets and threats and sanctions, through conversation, through understanding and trust, we will get them to not pursue nuclear weapons. What do you say to that?
I think I would answer that and say that as soon as we concede the Sudetenland to Herr Hitler, then we'll have peace in our time. Let's look back at the history of appeasement and see what it's gotten over time, not just with American leadership, but with other countries who displayed either strong leadership or weak leadership. And every time an attempt at appeasement simply yields a less desirable outcome at the end of whatever period you're discussing, and merely emboldens the misbehavior, the miscreant, to act more and more in that manner. We went down this path for years post-Gulf War with Saddam Hussein, and ended up having to take him down anyway. And what this regime in Iran sees is not only the apology to Ukraine, but they see when President Obama had a chance to support the Green Revolution in Iran and stepped back from it, didn't support it. He continued to support the Mullah regime when he decided that leading from behind was somehow a good strategy in Libya, and the waffling most recently in Syria. My goodness, why not? What an excellent opportunity to take somebody like Rouhani, who's pretty slick, as you know. I mean, he's a good PR guy, good con man. Put him up in front and say, okay, now you go and make nice to the West and put him back to sleep again, and we'll finish this nuclear program rickety-tick as fast as we can.
So, Colonel, are we headed for a world war?
I don't know about a world war, but I certainly think a regional war, and that right now the players are lining up, and it's again, I'll tap into history and talk about the alignment of large nations around small nations leading up to the Guns of August in 1914, and there's a lot of similarities here. In other words, where you take two relatively, in the scope of the world, two relatively small nations, Israel and Iran, and they're going head to head, and then the rest of the world chooses up sides. And in that case, then we're looking at Russia, China on one side, along with probably some lesser states there, certainly Pakistan and more the Islamic states. We're looking at America supposedly on the other side, and what are the Europeans going to do? I think their inclination on this one, Crane, is going to be to sit it out. And candidly, they don't have much these days to contribute anyway, as we've seen in Iraq and Afghanistan over the past decade. Is the best they can do is field some small units who, albeit brave and very good soldiers, aren't going to be a factor on a major battlefield. Meanwhile, we've got problems in our southern hemisphere. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see countries like Venezuela and others in the region fall in on the side of the mullahs, and so we could be, in a multi-front engagement in a very precarious position. Now, will it come to that? I don't know. I'm not necessarily predicting that, but you ask on a what-if basis, and certainly that's the what-if that it comes to a logical conclusion.
Well, again, I think that's what troubles me, and it sounds like you, because we look at history and how things line up, and what we're seeing again is the 30s. And we're seeing what happens when you have the idea of the League of Nations or the United Nations, and you put faith in those organizations as opposed to understanding good and evil and recognizing it and being declarative and confronting it. And
I think
go
on
ahead.
one of these
Yeah.
discussions we ought to talk about the UN, because I think there's a lot of misapprehensions about the United Nations that you and I ought to address, and we don't have time tonight, but that maybe you can stick that on your calendar sometime.
Absolutely.
This blind faith that a lot of Europeans and a lot of Americans have in the United Nations as a problem solver, I think has been proven over time to be fallacious. The only time the UN has ever really become engaged in anything that amounted to anything was the rescue of South Korea in 1950, and the reason that happened was because the Soviet Union at the time was boycotting the Security Council, so it got through. These days, we can't even get a wrist slap resolution through. So, and as far as problem solving, the UN has turned into more of a factor of exacerbating a problem rather than settling it.
Okay, I'm going to give you, and we've got about 2-3 minutes left, but I'm going to give you 3 events. Our soon to be withdrawal in Afghanistan, or projected withdrawal, if you will. Our deal with Syria and Assad, allowing the UN to be, and Russia to come in and really be the verifiers of what Assad's going to do with his chemical weapons program, and Benghazi, our lack of a response to punish those who committed, at least in a way that we would maybe some things are going on behind the scenes, but we haven't seen them, and we've also been lied to on that. What do those things, do those things work together to send a signal? First,
absolutely.
Tell me about the American people. What signal does it send to us and the American soldier, as well as to the world?
Let's look at the world first, and I think the signal is there's a common denominator in all 3 of those, and that is weakness and unwillingness to become involved, which is made even more apparent by a rhetorical bluster that accompanies the weakness. In other words, it's just like the schoolyard bully yelling threats and then not following through on them. And so this just loses our face and position, if you will, worldwide. As far as the American people go, I'm concerned that increasingly the American people are disengaged, and that they either don't understand or don't want to even trouble their minds with foreign policy, because what they see is an endless media litany of disaster after disaster. We had Iraq in the bag. It was won, and then now it's become, and in the process of becoming a vassal state to Iran, because we simply packed up and left. What's going to happen to Afghanistan is going to be 10 times worse, because we're going to see a resurgence of the Taliban and a resurgence of civil war and warlordism. The Syria, you couldn't even speak the lines without chuckling that we're going to rely on the United Nations and Putin to verify chemical weapons, or to somehow bring Assad to the table. And when the world, which is based on realism, looks at this and sees what's really happening, it simply emboldens the aggressor. When the American people, who tend to, a large percentage of the American people tend to swallow whole what they hear from the administration or from the president, are going to be led on a sharp tangent, because they're thinking that we're doing real well. We're not in the war anymore. We're not spending money, this, that, and the other thing, and yet our position of domestically with our economy and our endless spending and our weakness abroad is undermining the republic, and I feel that very strongly, and it pains me to say that. I never thought we'd have to say that on the air.
But it's true, and this is what's happening Colonel, we appreciate you taking the time. We, as you know, we could talk for hours. At times we have, and you've made time for that, and we always appreciate it.
Yeah, it's always fun to be on with you. And, again, I hate to leave on a somber note on a nice Friday evening, but, as I always tell our people here, sports fans, you've got to see the world as it really is, not as you want it to be, and deal with that. And that's, I guess that's the last comment I'd leave you with tonight.
Well, Colonel, it's the way to truly honor the sacrifice of what we have been given by and provided for by the likes of you and the people that you are helping at the Valhalla Project, along with your wife. It is a project to help service members come back from the battlefield and integrate back into society. And he has always been about that. I encourage you. I've liked the page. I will put it up on the Facebook, and you can count on Colonel Cucullu being back here, same time next week, right here on AFR Talk. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. Colonel, thank you. Good to be with you.
Good night, Crane. Thank you.
Take care. We will return. Seaton in the bullpen. Yes. What were you about to say, Crane? Bullpit. Yes. Bully pulpit. Been a long week. Seaton is ready. He's charged up. He's got 5 bats in his hands. 5 bats. Aren't you supposed to just be one with a weight? Oh, he's ready. Believe you me, he'll knock it out. Discussing exactly what happened, the split between the establishment and the Tea Party, and the future of the Republican Party and the conservative movement. Seaton Motley next, president of Less Government. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. Proudly on. Say it with me now. AFR Talk.
With all the talk about the rules and regulations of healthcare reform, it's nice to know Christians do have a choice. Medishare. Unlike insurance, Medishare is Christian medical sharing, a nationwide community of Christians who share each other's healthcare bills. Members live healthy, God-honoring lifestyles, which keeps costs down. And unlike insurance, your dollars won't go to pay for procedures or treatments you find objectionable. Plus, the new healthcare law has a provision for members of health-sharing ministries, so you don't have to buy insurance or face penalties. Medishare is a healthcare choice Christians can believe in.
Learn how thousands of Christians can help you save on your health care. For your free information guide, call 855-PSALM-23. Not available in Montana. Medishare, affordable biblical health care. Call 855-PSALM-23. That's 855-PSALM-23.
They work harder than anyone will ever know, making sacrifices for the sake of their calling. They aren't perfect, and they get uncomfortable if they suspect that anyone is putting them on a pedestal. But they still like to know they're appreciated. They're your pastor, and this month is Pastor Appreciation Month, your chance to show honor where honor is due. Open your heart, activate your creativity, and let your pastor know that they are loved. A reminder that October is Pastor Appreciation Month from the American Family Association.
AFR Talk.
AFR Talk.
We'd like to hear how God has used AFR Talk in your life. Has He motivated you to become engaged in the culture war? Has He used AFR Talk to help you grow as a Christian? Call us and share your story. We might use it on the air during our upcoming Share-a-thon. Here's the number, 800-326-4543, option 8. 800-326-4543, option 8. God is using AFR Talk. What's your story?
News, pop culture,